The latest Trump indictment has thrown gasoline on the fire of a divided America. Many on the progressive side rejoicing in what they see as the former president's comeuppance. But many on the other side so outraged by the perceived overreach of the Biden Department of Justice that Trump's poll numbers in Republican primaries are actually rising. The Real Clear Politics average showing Trump's lead over his closest challenger stood at 51% to Ron DeSantis' 19.3% on July 23rd. But a week later, on the day of the latest indictment, that lead had climbed to 54%, while DeSantis had dropped another point to 18.1%. And even before America has heard any trial testimony, many voters' minds are made up.
I'll be voting for Trump in 2024 election.
The MAGA crowd is nothing if not loyal, but they make up roughly only half of Republican voters. Yet Trump's ability to command attention, TV ratings, or as critics say, to suck the oxygen out of the room, is leaving another strong field of GOP candidates flailing for attention. They may eventually get their attention as debates get underway and primaries inch closer.
But I believe I am better positioned to take the America First agenda even further than Trump did. I think it's a fact, Brett. We have to admit it. I don't blame Trump or anybody else for this. 30% of this country becomes psychiatrically ill when he's in the White House. I'm not yet having that effect on people, even when I'm advancing the same policies, in some instances going even further.
Democrats, meanwhile, face their own daunting dilemma.
For this upcoming election, I want to bring back Obama. That could be my candidate.
Having already served 2 terms, Obama can't run again. But that particular voter's choice illustrates the weakness of President Biden. His disapproval ratings now at 54.5%. Polls show a rematch between Trump and Biden to be a toss-up. That, while evidence of then Vice President Joe Biden's involvement in his son's alleged influence peddling schemes continues to drip out. The day before Trump's latest indictment, Hunter Biden's former business partner detailed to congressional investigators and in this TV interview how then Vice President Biden phoned into his son's meetings with foreign businesses.
I mean, what is that? A grown man calling his dad on a speakerphone during a business meeting?
Right, and to be clear, sometimes it was the call was coming in and the speaker would go on. So it's just the president. You have to be, you understand DC, right? So the power to have that access in that conversation, and it's not in a scheduled conference call, and it's a part of your family. That's like the pinnacle of power in DC. Yeah, yep. In the rear view, it's an abuse of soft power, I'd say.
An abuse of soft power.
Underlying the legal quicksand that both the incumbent president and his chief rival face, Americans will have to endure an array of uncertainties. The prospect of Biden facing an impeachment in the Republican-held House, while his likely competitor Trump bounces between campaign rallies, primaries, and criminal trials. The ages and infirmities of not just our leading presidential contenders, but of most of Washington's leadership is also cause for concern. Biden is 80, Trump 77. Mitch McConnell, 81, James Clyburn, 83, Steny Hoyer, 84, Maxine Waters, 84, Chuck Grassley, 89, and Dianne Feinstein, 90. Who would step in should Biden falter? The unpopular VP, Kamala Harris, or perhaps California Governor Gavin Newsom? Last year, for the first time in a century, his state saw an exodus of unhappy citizens amidst high crime and taxes, losing 138,000 people. But perhaps riskiest for America is a growing unease, especially among conservatives, that their right to vote for the candidate of their choice is being usurped by the deep state and by politicized charges against President Biden's likely challenger. We are in uncharted territory. This election season will hold unforeseen surprises ahead.
I don't know what's really going on. Hopefully, this year goes better, but for now, I don't know.
On the 2024 election, I'm very much undecided. Going to have to wait for, telltale signs such as the debates and those types of things.
At this point, it's too early. So, it's going to be interesting, though. So.
It might be better, as the founders believed, that rather than throw a match on this legal bonfire with all of its impending trials and potential impeachments, that American voters should render their verdict at the voting booth, not the courtroom. But that's still a long way off, another 15 months in which the world and our politics will surely changed, and probably not for the better. Joining us now, the political correspondent for Real Clear Politics, Susan Crabtree. Susan, good to see you.
Great to see you, Doug.
As I mentioned in that piece, we are truly in uncharted political waters here. Where does all of this lead?
Well, it is a quite interesting dynamic. Unprecedented is the word of the day that I keep hearing over and over again in these indictments. We've never seen a president indicted, it's no less 3 times. So, we're on a long legal path. Both candidates, top candidates for their nominations, have clouds over their heads, legal clouds, and are and with Trump having to spend a lot of money and time, and his lawyers focused on these charges. I think that the voters are very concerned. We saw back in the spring, I haven't seen a poll recently, but most of the voters do not want these 2 candidates. They'd rather have another choice. The voters, according to an NBC News poll, 70% of Americans believe Biden should not be running for re-election, and that includes 51% of Democrats. And then 60% of Americans, including a third of Republicans, don't want Trump to be running for president. So while these legal issues play out, we don't see, at least not yet, any other viable candidates coming forward. So right now, it looks like it's going to be a rematch of Trump versus Biden, and a long, arduous legal process in the middle of it, which can be very distracting, as you know. But we also have a wild card with a lot of speculation surrounding Gavin Newsom and his PAC, Political Action Committee, and his travels this summer to red states, getting scrutinized both in California and the nation. And he just this week DeSantis agreed to a debate with Gavin Newsom. So it's this bizarre shadow campaign that we've never seen before. And it seems like the American public is not happy with their 2 top choices. So we could have some wild cards in this election, no doubt.
And at least half the country, the 70 million people or so who voted for Donald Trump, are truly unhappy to see the courts intervening in this way. This gets back to my point about the founders, that when you have this, potentially highly politicized prosecution, at least that's what half the country thinks, it's best to let the country decide. You don't want the courts to be deciding the fate of a man who could potentially be the next president of the United States.
Well, I covered the FBI ethics investigations. I was an ethics reporter on Capitol Hill for many years. And the FBI always halted any progress in its investigation, at least publicly, until after the election. And we saw that play out with James Comey saying, with Hillary Clinton and her laptop email issues, that was the first time that I ever saw a Justice Department official come forward and acknowledge an investigation in the middle of a campaign. I thought that was wrong at the time. And now we're seeing that vastly accelerated. And of course, it's giving fodder to President Trump and his supporters to say this is not a election. We're not having an election. We're having a persecution and a prosecution, as he said on the tarmac yesterday after his arraignment.
Some talking head on television suggested the other day, and I thought it was a good idea, that perhaps the judges who are involved in all of these Trump prosecutions should get together and decide on the timeline for these prosecutions, perhaps even push it beyond the coming election, should Trump be the nominee, because that would allow Americans to make their choices regardless of any sort of courtroom proceedings. And then, of course, Susan, you have the potential reality that Trump could still run for president and be president as a convicted felon. There's nothing in the Constitution that says a convicted felon cannot run for president. He could potentially be running the government from behind a jail cell.
Well, he would certainly pardon himself. I think that's a possibility too,
yes.
Although I haven't looked into that prospect. But I think the problem we have with this case moving forward is we might see a conviction, and then it could be appealed it could be overturned on appeal and even go up to the Supreme Court, which a lot of people are, that's people are alleging that even the Supreme Court now is politicized. So, I think having this occur in the middle of an election is a terrible precedent for the nation, and it's going to further divide the country.
Indeed. As we said, uncharted territory, lots of twists and turns to come. Susan Crabtree of Real Clear Politics, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.